And welcome back. It's now 11 minutes after 7 o'clock, and as promised before the break, we have been joined with personnel from the Belize Coast Guard to talk about a myriad of issues. And joining us, we have Captain Elton Bennett, who's the Vice Commandant of the Belize Coast Guard. We have Lieutenant Commander Gregory Soberanis, 1st Fleet Belize Coast Guard. And then we have Lieutenant Alma Pinelo, Sector Commander from the Belize Coast Guard as well. Good morning and welcome to the show.
Good morning.
So before we started this segment, I had a little lesson about rank and how it works. So I think that would be interesting for people as a little tidbit in terms of how rank is managed, because we have a specific seating based on ranking.
All right, good morning, William. Good morning, Son. Good morning, Belize. Certainly a pleasure to be here this morning. So we were talking about ranks and how the protocol is, works in terms of positioning. The way we're configured, with myself this morning being the senior officer, it's normal in the middle. Flanked to the left would normally be the next senior person, in this case, Lieutenant Commander Soberanis, and then to my right, Alma Pinelo, Lieutenant. So that's how we'd be configured, whether you're sitting, moving.
At a table somewhere.
At a table. Protocol is very, very important in military routine, and we try to maintain that.
Or even like in a parade, or it would be the same thing, or just walking?
In ceremonies, in seating plans, wherever there is presence and movement, that's the protocol that would be maintained.
Now, let's talk a little bit about each of you. What made you decide to actually join the Belize Coast Guard in the first place?
So I'll start. 22 years of service. Did 10 years in the Belize Defense Force before I transferred over. I was at the Maritime wing of the Belize Defense Force when the Coast Guard was formed, so it was an easy transition for myself. No regrets. I believe that the Coast Guard turned out to be a credible and very sought after profession. No regrets at all. So something that I would definitely consider for the long term. This is my career. And I'll be here for the long haul.
What made you decide on the Maritime wing of the BDF way back then?
Love the environment. The Maritime space is definitely a good place to with its challenges of hardship and dealing with the criminal elements, but also interfacing with the Belizean public. The mariners out at sea was something that I was always interested in. Just the mere fact of working out at sea is a really good environment to work.
Yourself?
Good morning. At the time, I was a jungle warfare instructor in the Belize Defense Force. I met General Borland, who at the time was the commandant for the Belize Coast Guard. And he extended that invitation for me to come over. And ever since that time, I've never regretted going into the Coast Guard. It has been quite an experience, tremendous exposure, and it has really developed me as an individual, having a greater understanding of maritime affairs and maritime safety and security.
And yourself?
For me, it was a little different. I was in my first year of sixth form at SJC, and I was living with my uncle, who's a retired lieutenant colonel, and he gave me the idea to try out the officer cadet selection at BDF. So this was December 2008. And then I was, Admiral Borland was actually on the board, on my board, and I got selected to be an officer cadet, and then I started my career. Once I finished, I graduated from SJC, then I went over to the U.S. Coast Guard Academy in 2009. So that's when my career started.
Your ascent has been a rather interesting one, and we've been following, well, all three of you, but more so you, Alma, in terms of where you've come from and the achievements that you've made. I know that very recently you were awarded as one of the top students or the top performers for the course that you undertook.
Yes.
How did your ambition come about to join the Coast Guard and to as a woman, and then to be able to remain and be able to push forward in terms of your own career ambitions?
Well, when I joined, I had no idea a lot of what the Coast Guard was doing, because it was 2008, Coast Guard started in 2005, so it was very, very just in the starting ups.
Yeah.
But definitely the career has been a very fruitful one for me. I was fortunate enough and I'm thankful enough that I am being able to open those doors and break those ceilings for other females that want to join the Coast Guard. Over the last 6 years in the Coast Guard as an officer, I've seen more and more women being more interested in doing what Coast Guard mandates them to do, and they're not afraid to be whatever they want to be. We have engineers, we have people in the fleet, we have people in offices. We have the opportunities to do whatever it is that your specialty is, whatever it is that your talents are. You can come to Coast Guard and you can be fruitful in whatever you want to do.
Now, a lot of people in the public domain do not clearly understand what is the difference between the Coast Guard and the BDF. Are they one and the same in terms of an entity or just brother organizations?
So 2 different departments under the defense section of the Ministry of National Security. The main difference is that the Belize Coast Guard is a military organization, yes, but with law enforcement authority. So it's that law enforcement aspect that is tagged on to the Belize Coast Guard that makes it a different organization from the Defense Force, which is purely military. We have that cross of being both military and law enforcement.
So you could make arrests at sea and that sort of stuff.
Yes, and that's where the maritime wing of the Belize Defense Force fell short. That's the reason why we created the Coast Guard, because we were limited in terms of our enforcement capabilities out at sea. So we formed the umbrella organization of the Belize Coast Guard, one organization empowered to enforce all laws at sea. But we still maintain that military routine and by legislation, a military organization. So we're a hybrid of military and police.
So let me ask you guys this. I know that since its formation in 2005, a lot of investments have been made in the Belize Coast Guard in terms of assets, in terms of human resources and everything that goes into the full functionality of this organization. Nonetheless, there have been numerous challenges that, notwithstanding the amount of boots on the ground, or in this case, men and women at sea, you still face the challenges of not being able to, for instance, fully patrol the entire waters of the country, where a lot of illegal activities happen, both of a domestic and of an international nature. How are you guys being able to address that?
Well, Belize is a maritime nation, both by geography and by economy.
Yeah.
When you look at 2/3 of our population lives along the coast, Belize City and San Pedro accounting for a large portion of that. When you look at the economy of it, 40% of Belize's economy is tourism, and a large percentage of that is maritime tourism. Fisheries industry accounting for 5 to 7% of our GDP. The maritime trade, 85% of what we import into Belize comes by sea. So there is a lot of activities out at sea. By nature, we are a maritime people. So there are a lot of activities out at sea, both recreation, transportation, movement of people from Belize City to San Pedro. It's amazing if you'd clock how much passengers are moving just by the water taxis, not including the recreational boating that occurs outside of these offshore areas. So that in itself brings more activities out at sea. You will more than likely have more incidents out at sea as well. So what we try to do is to analyze the situation as it develops over time. We are operating in a long-term Coast Guard strategy. We started off in 2005. We drafted a 15-year strategy, and we had incremental reviews over time, trying to adjust or realign our strategy as we go along. Completely changing the Coast Guard at some point at the intervals that required us to shift in order to meet those threats. And so we are developing. Yes, we have received a lot of support, a lot of equipment and infrastructure, particularly from our foreign partners. We started in 2005 with 50 men and women. We're now up to 420 and increasing. And we started off with one deployment, and we're now up to 13 deployments across the country. So we have increased our footprint over time. It took some time to be able to mature and to develop the experience of being mariners out at sea. And in order for us to confront those threats that we face as a nation, it took some time. And you'll never be able to have a vessel or a footprint across the entire country. Our sea spaces accounts for 14,000 square miles as compared to 8,000 square miles on land. So it is a vast environment for us to be able to patrol and dominate. So it comes with its challenges of being a broad area to enforce.
Let's talk a little bit about your recruitment, because you spoke just now about the increase in personnel that you've seen. It still appears that you're kind of an elite group when people compare it. What makes the Coast Guard more demanding in terms of its recruitment?
Well,
or is it?
I wouldn't say it's necessarily more demanding. Our criteria is a little different from the BDF, where if you talk about education level, BDF requires primary school, we require one level up, which is high school, to initially join, or to what we call as enlisting in the Coast Guard. For the most part, everything else is the same. The age range, we do ask that they know how to swim. We operate in the maritime areas and we expect people to know to swim. But for the most part, the physical and everything else is the same. I wouldn't necessarily say we're trying to be the elite group, but we do have standards and we want to maintain them. And it is very competitive. I've done a lot of recruiting drives, and the swimming itself, the very first one that I was a part of, we eliminated like 100 people because they either lie that they know how to swim, or they get there and they realize that they can't swim as well. And the stress with it is also a big factor, but we need to be able to actually perform in times of stress.
What's the test when you have to go in, the swimming test?
The swimming test, we separate everybody out into their groups, that we call syndicates, and you do a simple treading of water for 2 minutes, and then you do a swim right out there at the Coast Guard. It is 800 yards, 200 yards, and it's 100 go and come back, but the catch is that you have to do it in a certain amount of time. So we give them 8 minutes. And we have some that do it in 3.5. And we have some that take a little longer. And so and behold, every time we have a recruiting drive, the sea state is not exactly calm. So I think that's been every single time. So I think the gods know what we're doing, but it is not impossible. It's very doable. But it is very challenging for those that aren't exactly strong swimmers.
We would advertise for 2 weeks, and we would get about 500 applications within 2 weeks. Of that 500, we would have to narrow it down to about 250, maybe 275 to come and sit the exam. And by the time that swimming evolution is completed, it would be down to about 150.
And how much is an intake?
It varies. This year we're looking at 85, and there are times when we were able to recruit only 50. It all depends on financing.
When you look at all three areas of the national security apparatus as we describe it, Coast Guard, for whatever reason, and well, I think it's very obvious, you guys demand the most prestige of the three. I don't want to put it that way, but that's, for all intents and purposes, that's how it is. You have the Belize Police Department, you have the Belize Defense Force, you have the Belize Coast Guard. When you look at discipline, when you look at other areas where you guys are involved in, people look up to the Coast Guard. You don't hear instances where you have officers that are wayward, in a manner of speaking, that are doing things that bring ill repute to the organization. How does this structure work in terms of being able to either keep a lid on personal behavior while you're enlisted as a person in uniform?
Well, the Coast Guard is really defined by two things, the people that serve and its missions. In terms of its people that serve in the organization, we try to keep that as professional as we can. Professional development and training is something that we stress on. We try to get exposure for our people. On an average year, you'd have somewhere between 50 and 75 Coast Guard men and women that would deploy overseas for training. And that exposure alone brings back a lot and a high level of professionalism. In order for us to become officers, you have to do a commission course, and we don't have commission courses here in Belize. So that in itself lays the foundation for a high level of professionalism, and then there's that continuity of continued training and exposure that we maintain overseas. But that strict military routine that defines us as a military is what really the standard that we were able to hold our personnel accounted to, ensuring that discipline is swift and we're able to deal with situation as soon as it arises. So disciplinary code of conduct is what really holds the organization together.
The next question I have, because as we're trying to at least get an idea of how everything operates before we deal with some of the challenges that you may have as an organization. Now, when you talk about your officers and having to take a international course since it's not available in Belize, how does that work? Is it by recommendation from within the ranks itself? How do you select people who you think will have an upward trajectory to really perform well internationally and then bring it back home as well?
Well, everything we do is by a chain of command. So if we get a list of training for a certain period, the commandant will then task somebody to select. For the most part, it will go to Lieutenant Commander Soberanis, who's the fleet commander. And we, as his sector commanders, take a look at who we have in our personnel, in our platoons. Everything we do goes by merit. You need to earn the opportunity to go abroad. You need to show that you are responsible, that you will be a good representation for Belize, because once we're out there, that is what we become. We become a representation for our country more than ourselves. Discipline is a huge factor in it as well, that you are a good enlisted or officer, whatever the level may be, that you pass your physical tests. So everything is like a check in the box. It's like a checklist. You go through it, and then you get a pool of people, and then you select the best person. And we do that, and we give our nominations to him, and then we sit down as a team and we select who is the best suited person, whether it be a male or a female, to go on a course. And that's for every single course we do.
What are the countries that you work in partnership with to provide that training?
The US, Canada, UK, the wider Caribbean, Mexico.
What has the experience been like for you, Mr. Soberanis, in terms of being able to develop professionally and, of course, being able to manage other persons that are under you?
I think one of the great things about the military and the way we're groomed is that it's a holistic approach to professional growth and development, where you are taught leadership, you're taught command and control, you're taught communications, you're taught basic management, and your management skills is enhanced and improved as you grow in your career. Our career development really prepares you for the level that you're going to be operating at. And so when you function at a particular post, at a particular level, the training that you receive, because we do go to the best military schools in the world. The military education that we receive really prepares you for the environment that you're operating in. So really and truly it comes down to the training that you receive. And one of the significant things for us as the Coast Guard is the team that we have. I think it first stems from the leadership that we have. We have Admiral Boland and Captain Bennett, who really sets the tone as it relates to the Coast Guard strategy and policies, which trickles down to us as subordinate commanders. And I think the way we're structured and the level of leadership that is provided for us, where we in return can emulate that leadership and provide that standard of leadership to those who are under our command. So I think the holistic approach the way the training, the way we respect each other as officers, and that sense of family and brotherhood really helps you in your leadership capacity as you lead and command men and women.
How are you? I wanted to ask Captain Bennett, because you spoke a little bit early on about a hybrid kind of approach where you have the law enforcement component. So how does the training factor that in? Because most people in Belize will not have had any exposure at all to any kind of law enforcement. We don't have any kind of programs within the school. I think Galen may be starting a program to talk a little bit about law enforcement. But how does the Coast Guard actually manage that portion of it?
So it's an interesting blend, because you have to maintain that military routine and also incorporate that law enforcement education into your curriculums. So at basic training level, that 3 months of training, there's a lot of military education that goes into it. Half the military routine, and the other half of it is that law enforcement training. We do rely on the Belize Police Department a lot in terms of providing that law enforcement training. Learning how to prosecute cases, how to handle evidence, looking at their use of force policies and all the experiences that they bring to the table. So we do rely a lot on the police experience in putting together a curriculum. So it's really a blend of that military education along with law enforcement that really shapes our curriculum.
Now, you talk about the partnership. What kind of synergies you have between the Coast Guard, police, and BDF?
Well, it's a good thing that we all work under one ministry. We do meet regularly. There's good communication systems that we have in place in terms of the three heads of department, the commander of the Belize Defense Force, the Commandant Coast Guard, and the Commissioner of Police. Very good working relationship, and I think it really starts there, because those three individuals really have a good thing going in terms of working together and ensuring that at operational level, that the different operational units are able to incorporate the different directives that are passed down. So the mere fact that we're a part of one ministry and the good working relationship across the three departments is what really brings that synergy and make us effective.
All right. What we're going to do right now is we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll talk about the Coast Guard really in action, working over their jurisdiction, which can be extremely difficult. Don't go anywhere. Open Your Eyes returns after these messages.
For over 20 years, Great Belize Television, Channel 5, has been the leader in award-winning local programming. We have also produced some of the best video commercials, documentaries, and live events for clients countrywide. And we continue to offer high-quality production services to maximize your advertising needs for your business or organization. From concept to completion, let us help you achieve your marketing goal by producing your commercial, documentary, graphic animation, live event, or even designing your website. Using state-of-the-art equipment and experienced personnel, we can make your ideas come alive. For more information, come see us on Coney Drive or give us a call at 223-0146 or 223-7781 or email us at gbtv@btl.net. Great Belize Productions, making great television in Belize.
And welcome back. And we're still joined by our guests representing the Belize Coast Guard. And we've been talking a little bit about the structure of the Coast Guard. And now we want to talk a bit more about actually putting things in place. We've had some sensational cases recently where we've seen bodies washing up on shore. What is the role of the Belize Coast Guard when we see something like that happening, especially given the fact that you said that you have law enforcement powers when it comes to maritime areas?
William, citizen security and safety is of utmost importance for the Belize Coast Guard. Maritime safety and security is definitely a huge part of our mandate. And of recent, as you've alluded to, we've seen a lot of activities occurring in the maritime domain. As you know, Belize continues to be a transshipment point for narco-traffickers. We've seen a lot of, our intelligence unit has observed and has indicated to us the numerous drops that have occurred over the past few months. There's always a second and third effect when these things occur in the maritime space, in the maritime domain for us. And we anticipate these things happening based on several indicators. So the Coast Guard have an operational plan in place whenever such incidents occur. And of late, you know, we've had the incident up, the double homicide up in San Pedro. And then we've had the incident here right in front of Belize City here with the 5 individuals.
And the disappearance of the others
And the
prior.
disappearance of the others prior. We have been actively engaged over the past few weeks with the police department, working in San Pedro. In fact, Coast Guard has what we call Plan San Pedro. We've definitely increased our enforcement efforts in that area of operation, which is Sector North for us, which is really and truly quite an active area because of its proximity to Mexico. As relates to that specific case with the double homicide, I can tell you that from the onset, we've been in constant communication first with the Commissioner of Police. We've had key leadership engagements in San Pedro with the mayor and the minister. We were also a part of a town meeting that took place in San Pedro, I think about a week and a half ago. And one thing that was expressed and conveyed to the residents in San Pedro is that we have, as well, like the police, we've assigned additional personnel, a special team to San Pedro to conduct strike operations. And it's a soft and hard approach to counter the crime situation in San Pedro. And the soft approach is, of course, is engaging the community, engaging our stakeholders, and addressing their concerns. And the hard approach is identifying those criminal elements who are directly engaged in illicit and illegal activities and do targeted strikes on these individuals. We know that of recent, in collaboration with this particular case with Dr. Swank and Mr. Granell, the Coast Guard dive team, or team, did a secondary sweep of the crime scene, and several items were recovered from the sea floor, from the seabed, which were handed over to the police and the FBI for forensic analysis. So we've played a significant part in what is happening in San Pedro. We've been very vigilant as relates to that lagoon area just west of San Pedro town, that Boca del Rio area. We've also been vigilant just north of San Pedro town, conducting foot patrols. As you know, the Coast Guard is not only, we do not only conduct boat operations, we are trained by our U.S. counterparts to do tactical land operations as well, especially in northern San Pedro, where there's a large ground land area. So we've been vigilant on the ground, and we've assisted police whenever they've been conducted these land-based operations, because what normally happens in San Pedro is that the police would strike from land, and the criminal element would escape through the lagoon area. So we position ourselves strategically in those areas where they might have an avenue to exit or an escape route. And so we've been able to act as a cut-off group from that maritime space. And as a result, as you can see over the past 2 weeks, where we've been very successful as relates to the season of ammunition, the over 105.56 rounds that the police discovered, and like I said, we were right there on the scene, working with the police when all this was happening. The cocaine, the weapons, you know, and we've been really engaged not only in San Pedro proper, but north of San Pedro Tongue as well. As you know, we've just completed the structure for a base up at Bacalar Chico, which is really and truly a hostile area for us. So we've been making great strides in our operational plan and our operational design in ensuring that, like I said, stakeholders and citizens and residents can have peace of mind as they move to and fro in those areas. It is a challenge because it's a vast area, you know, but it really and truly, we sit down, or intelligence analysts or intelligence officer, myself, and other members of our leadership, and it's a constant assessment and analyzing of the terrain and what is going on in that area of operation, because it's very fluid. So it's a constant paradigm shift of your operational plans and designs.
Now, I want to ask you a specific question, because we've seen the case with Dr. Swank take almost center stage. But when you look at the impact of the case with the 5 people whose bodies washed up outside of Belize City, for a lot of people locally, that was a far more dramatic case. How do you manage a situation like that, and in tandem with the police, has there been any gains in terms of understanding exactly what happened there? Because that seems to have been a case that, even though it was, you know, perhaps more gripping for people, I know you have a larger space that you had to focus on. What kind of gains, and how do you manage that kind of a case?
That is a significant case for us as well, William. I know the case up in San Pedro basically took center stage as relates to the media and optics. But really and truly, the case here in Belize City was also is also a significant case for us. In fact, we've been working those cases parallel as relates to the incidents, and we've had tremendous resources placed on this particular case with those 5 individuals. Our intelligence cell has done tremendous work, significant work as relates to giving us an understanding of what is happening, you know, in our harbor, in these offshore islands. We've known for a while now that the offshore islands in front of Belize City is an area where the criminal element operates the stock weapons. Whenever you have vessels that are stolen, they prefer, they would hide it in these mangrove areas, because there are a lot of small mangrove areas that large vessels cannot access. And so it is an ideal area for concealment. And so we've been getting a lot of information, reference what is happening in the harbor area, and we've been working. Like I said, for the past 2 weeks, when this incident first occurred, we've been out there every single day. Every single day. The Coast Guard was out there working with the police department, working with special branch, gathering evidence, going to the scene, like I said, doing sweep after sweep to ensure that we've combed the area properly. We've deployed our small boat assets to comb those mangrove areas that like I said, our larger vessel cannot access. So it has been quite busy for us really over the past 3 weeks, and again, because of the way we're designed and how we planned and how we conduct operations, we do not go into crisis mode. And it is not something that is overwhelming for us because it's operational management. And so we know how to commit resources, we know how to commit personnel, and as a result, the managing of these cases is done.
When you look at drug activity that's happening in and around Belize as a transshipment point, as you mentioned earlier, it would seem as if though the aspect of wet drops had gone away for a while, and you're hearing of airplanes landing in the north of the country, and then you also hear now they're in the Sarstoon area. And it seems as if though it's only recently that we're revisiting this whole issue of wet drops out at sea. You look at the entire sea space and the coverage that you guys would have in terms of patrol, and it's expansive. Belize City, the area of Belize City may just be one area of it, but then you have also problem areas, perhaps in the Turn-F, in other areas where it's perhaps a bit more difficult or challenging to get to in a timely manner. How does the Coast Guard manage and deploy its assets to be able to provide as wide a coverage as it can for these specific areas?
So in terms of transnational organized crime, we need to approach it jointly along with the other security forces here in Belize, but also our partners along Central America and the wider Caribbean. So those aircrafts that are coming into Belize, those maritime shipments that are coming into Belize, we do rely a lot on intelligence, regional intelligence, and understanding the common operating picture, and try to get first-hand information where those recent trends are shifting to. So it's a integrated approach, interagency approach, working along with the Joint Intelligence and Operating Center in Price Barracks, where the Belize Coast Guard, the Police Department, and the Belize Defense Force sits down on a 24-hour basis and try to analyze these situations. So what we bring to the table is that forward deployed Coast Guard presence. With those deployments out at sea, and whether it's trafficking by air or by sea, we are the first line of defense for the country, because the aircraft coming in, our guys will be the first to spot it and be able to track it. So we're pretty much that first line defense, and what we try to do is to strategically locate our forward operating bases, but also cover those gaps in between those operating bases with routine and roaming patrols. So it comes with its challenges as relates to the increased wet drops as we've seen over the past few months. But we try to be able to track aircraft coming in, and then deploying surface assets to ensure that we cover that track line. That we see those trends across the coastal front of Belize.
Now, go ahead.
No, and as Captain Bennett said, it's an expansive area. I mean, our maritime domain is huge. And so first, it's almost like a three-layer defense type structure, where we have those forward deployed units out at sea. And then as you move inward, we have units that are responsible for the harbor. And that conduct patrols out in that harbor. And of significant importance as well is that we have a riverine unit that operates within the river here that separates north from south side and north side Belize City, which plays a significant role in supporting police operations here in Belize City. A lot of times, as mentioned, the criminal element uses the river as an avenue of escape. And there are those who live right alongside the riverbank. So the Coast Guard has been very active in the river as well, supporting precincts 1, 2, 3, and 4. And whenever police would conduct a strike operations on land, the Coast Guard would be in that immediate areas, like I said, as that marine support unit to ensure that the guys do not escape via vessel. So we have those layers in order for we have those layers that provide that safety net for people.
Prior to establishing your presence at the foot of the Belcan Bridge, it was a trend indeed that you will have people who commit crimes in and around the city and attempt to flee upriver and out to sea from the Halover Creek area.
Yes.
You're working with the police department in terms of being able to patrol and to cover that riverine space as you describe it.
Yes.
What has that been like? Because I presume that you do have fisher folk who traverse that area, and you do have people who use it to move marijuana, cocaine, whatever it is that they're into, weapons perhaps. How do you work with the police department in terms of being able to fully access and man that area?
So it's quite interesting, Sani, because as rightly said, I mean, being there in the open, people monitor you. The criminal elements study you. They study your movements, your timing, that type of thing. And we've made several observations relates to how they use that river as well. So we sit down with the police based on what our intelligence people are telling us and what the police intelligence, what they're getting as well. We sit down and based on that intelligence, we plan and we coordinate our operations for which period are we going to be in this particular area. Or police sometimes may call us and say, listen, Coast Guard, we understand that there's certain movements in this particular area. Could you provide support for us in this area? Because we know that there are several, that river have multiple entrances and exits separate from the bar mouth here by the Bliss Institute. You can access it through Halover. You can access it through the Burden Canal. And so we strategically place ourselves based on information that we receive or based on intelligence. And as much as possible, one of the things that we do is that we conduct that interaction and that interface with the residents who live along that riverside, because they do see a lot. And I think what really helps us as the Coast Guard is the credibility that we have, that people are confident enough to share certain information with us. Even when our patrols go to, let's say, Conchel Bay, people approach us, they share, they tell us what's going on, certain things that we may not be able to see. They pass that information to us. So, but the partnership with the police it's really and truly fruitful and productive. As Captain Bennett alluded to, there's no one agency that can do it on its own. It has to be an interagency approach in order for the plan to work.
Now, let's talk about the use of technology, because you're talking about expansive areas. And definitely resources or physical resources may be a challenge. How do you weave technology to make sure that you provide the coverage that is necessary? When we were having the landing of the planes, people were talking about radars not being a 24-hour kind of thing in Belize, so they were able to sneak in, so to speak, right? How do you use technology, and is it a 24-hour operation that you run?
So there are certain aspects that we won't be able to discuss in
Obviously,
detail.
yeah.
But you have seen a reduction in aircraft trafficking into Belize. I think over the recent past, we've had one or two. And there was a time when we were being hit on a regular basis, perhaps on a weekly basis. We were able to decrease that from across national security, working together, employing our technology here in Belize, but also relying on our partners. And they bring a lot to the table as it relates to surveillance. The U.S. Coast Guard is very active out here along with the U.S. Navy. And we also have a very good working relationship with our Mexican partners. We're able to provide a regional feed for us as well, direct feed into our Joint Intelligence and Operating Center, and then disseminating that information to the operational units. So we're able to adjust after those increased trafficking into Belize, and able to tap into those technologies that are available to our regional partners, and employing those as enablers for our operational units.
Now, when you look at the cases, people obviously want to hear results. You know, there's that big challenge that you have. Lieutenant Commander Soberanis, you spoke a little bit about communication very early on, but what is your communication strategy like when it comes to public? Because I think a lot of things might be happening in the I don't want to say in the dark, but away from the public eye. And so people feel as if though, you know, as time goes, you know, you had a disappearance, you don't hear much about it. You have this happening, you don't hear much about it. It's just going to fade, become a cold case, and it will never be solved. You know, maybe more than a decade ago, you had some men disappear, you know, that included a magistrate. I think that was the only body that was found. And people feel as if though, well, if it happens at sea, forget about it. It's impossible to find anything.
Yeah. So it comes with its challenges. Do recall the case quite well. The vessel Ocean Hopper, 7 fishermen that went missing. We found Magistrate Swift outside Glover's Reef. Remember that case very well. But the sea comes with its own challenges. When you're overboard, as compared to when you're on land, your body will remain on land. At sea, there's a short window of opportunity to find a body. Whether it's you're drifting at sea or you're dead, that window of opportunity is just a few hours. So that comes with its own challenges. How well we communicate with the wider public and to build that credibility is something that we've recognized, and we've been talking about this just last week. We had a session on strategic communications and how well we can get the Coast Guard message out, how well we can identify our stakeholders and those that we need to influence. And forums like these works well for us, so we're grateful for this opportunity to be here. But there are a few things that we plan to put in place. We have to meet the times. Social media is something that is a good platform for us to be able to reach a sector of the population. And we do have plans to increase that strategic communications.
And we've really been making an effort to, like I said, to have these key leadership engagements with the leadership for these coastal communities. I know last week, Sector South Commander for 4 days was down south, meeting with key leaders in Barranco, Hopkins, Punta Negra, and so this we'll continue to do this. We'll continue to conduct these key leadership engagements and begin to become more active in these communities. And this is only one aspect of our strategic communication plan, and we'll definitely need to, as you rightly said, William, to incorporate technology, and Captain Bennett has really been pushing that initiative with us as we discuss the way forward and how we're going to use the current technology to enhance how we operate.
When you look at these challenges that you face, the public perception is one thing, but what do you see as the challenges that you have to face to really be as effective as is necessary?
Resources is always an issue. You never have enough resources to be able to patrol the entire coastal length of Belize. So you have to rely on your analysis, trying to pick up where the trends are telling you need to be, so that we can employ your assets at the right location at the right time. So you'll never have everything that you need, but resources is definitely something that we're lacking. Another area that we fell short is in the area of air capability. No, because the Coast Guard does not have that air capability, we do rely a lot on the Belize Defense Force Air Wing for them to be able to do that maritime patrolling for us. So again, that's the interagency effort where we fall short as an organization to rely on our partners across national security, but also relying on those non-governmental organizations across those marine protected areas across Belize. Again, that working relationship really allows us to cover those gaps where we cannot reach.
Before we wrap our segment, the final question for me, because with the advent of television, you see internationally that Coast Guard may be randomly approaching vessels, checking on that kind of a thing. So there's always this sense of there's a presence, and you never know. How do you manage that kind of a presence? Because, most people in Belize will say, well, I've never seen the Coast Guard out at sea, coming for private vessels, etc. So what is your MO in terms of making your presence felt by the by fishermen, by regular citizens who may be recreational fishers?
So we do have a good thing going with the fishing community. We're able to track their vessels, we're able to communicate with them, they know exactly who to call in, and our response time for the fishing industry is crucial for economy. So we do have that good relationship with those fisher folks. As relates to recreational boating, if you're not seeing the Coast Guard and where you are, then perhaps you're not in a high risk area. As I mentioned, we do need we do need to analyze and assess our area of operation and ensure that we target those areas that we do need to target. At random, we'll be able to touch different locations, but the emphasis in the core of the Coast Guard operations is exactly where we need to be.
All right. Before we wrap, let's talk a little bit about your recruitment efforts, just to bring that to a head as we wrap up, so that people who are interested in becoming, a chosen member of your group.
So a reminder to the general public, if they do want to join the Coast Guard, the deadline for the applications is the 19th of this month. Like Captain Bennett said earlier, it is a lengthy process. We do go through all of the applications and ensure that they fall within the criteria. We do have our ad on our Facebook page if people want to go and look at that. But to be within the ages of 18, 20 to 24, born Belizean citizen, they must have we don't have an application form itself. I think that's a lot of the misconception. People say, well, where do I find this application letter? It's not a form. You write a letter directed to Admiral Borland as Commandant, and you pretty much just say why you want to join the Coast Guard. If you have anything that is a specialty, maybe you have some degree in something that is of use to us, and there is the ad right there. A recent police record is very important. We need to ensure that you do not have a record, a copy of your social security, the 2 letters of recommendation along with your resume, and we do have the height requirement for males being 5'5" and females being 5'3". We realize that Belizeans aren't exactly, they're very average height. We're not super tall, we're not Swedish or Nordic and those people, but it is important that we maintain a certain height because of the environments that we work in. The test will be held thereafter, and we will ensure that we get all the names out to those that have been selected by district before then. It is a full day. The day of recruitment is it's a very long day for everyone involved, and it is a major effort for the Belize Coast Guard, all hands on deck, so we ensure that everybody has that fair opportunity to prove him or herself to be a part of the Coast Guard.
All right. Well, we want to thank you very much for joining us this morning. Any final words?
Just grateful for the opportunity to be here. Thanks for the platform. Again, our communication strategy, we do appreciate the opportunity to speak to Channel 5 and to the wider nation about what the Coast Guard is doing. And rest assured that we are out there in those areas that we need to be in terms of operational security, but also providing the safety and security aspect of it for search and rescue. It's a big part of what we do. So grateful for this opportunity.
Okay.
William, let me add, we recently acquired an emergency line at the Coast Guard. It's a 999 number, and currently it's only for smartphones, right? So for mariners who are out there, and at any time they need to contact the Coast Guard, you can call that 999 number, and you will have direct contact with our operations center at the headquarters. So eventually the plan is to expand that, but currently it's only for smartphones. So that's a new additional to our operational concept.
All right. So you call 999.
Yes.
And
yes.
they'll get you.
Yes.
Thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having us.
And continue doing an excellent job.
Yes.
Thank you.
We're going to go ahead and take a break, and when we come back, it'll be to focus on character development in school-age children. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after these messages.